There are some dodgy psychotherapies out there. Did you know that some people have actually died in the process of therapy? You think I'm joking, but it's actually true. Today we're going to look into that therapy and two others. This is the start of my mini-series called Bizarre Therapies, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Or, as I like to call it, the surprisingly effective, the fraudulent, and the outright dangerous. Take a guess as to which therapy we're starting with today. These three therapies that I'm going to go into will shock you. It's amazing what some people will claim as therapeutic these days. We'll see techniques that leave people with more trauma than they came in with, strategies that do more to tear down self-esteem than build it up, and an approach that leaves people with a new love for life.
To being alive!
Quite literally. Let's get into it. I'm Hayden, a psychologist here in Australia, and this is my channel, Mind Cartography. Our first take is recovered memory therapy. Picture this, you're 15 years old, you've just been assaulted by your boyfriend, and you go to therapy sessions to work it out. 14 sessions in though, your whole world is turned upside down. It seems you've gone your whole life without realizing that your own father SA'd you as a child. Damning, right? How could he have done such horrible things to you? Things so terrible that you block them out of your mind for your entire life. Well, what if this isn't actually the story? What if I told you that that little girl's father never did anything to her? She went into therapy with no memory of CSA because it never actually happened. That therapist she had implanted false memories into her mind. Crazy. Her father actually lost parenting rights in this. It broke her whole family. Sad thing is, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Countless cases have been brought to the courts of psychotherapists unwittingly planting false memories of CSA into their patients. It's scary to think that this can happen. So how does it? Recovered memory therapy focuses on recovering repressed memories. Memories that live deep in the darkest parts of our unconscious minds. Now there's a lot of conjecture as to whether or not our memory system actually works like this, but we'll get into that later. Let's focus first on how the therapy came about. In the 1970s, public perception on trauma started to change. Increased publicity in the media and best-selling books like Trauma and Recovery highlighted to the public that CSA and incest and other trauma things like that were far more common than people had previously realized. Enter recovered memory therapy. Piggybacking on the work of Sigmund Freud, these therapists took to the idea that patients' problems could be explained by repressed childhood trauma. Psychologist Renee Fredrickson even wrote a book with a list of over 60 symptoms that were signs of repressed abuse. Did you know that if you have joint pain, trouble trusting your intuition, staying motivated, it may be a sign you have repressed childhood abuse? Books like these popularized the repressed memory landscape. And as such, RMT therapists got very good at honing their skills on how to uncover these memories. They use techniques in relaxation, hypnosis, age regression, guided imagery, dream interpretation to help their clients access these hidden memories. Using these exercises, therapists got very good at uncovering hidden trauma in their patients. So good that they raved about it in books, conference papers, even television talk shows. All this publicity furthered the idea that trauma was everywhere, that anyone could have a traumatic past just waiting to be uncovered in therapy. The downfall of recovered memory therapy came when researchers started to deep dive into the ways in which our memory system works. See, when I said there was conjecture as to whether or not memories can actually be repressed, it's because of this research. In 1995, Elizabeth Loftus and Jacqueline Pickerel conducted this study where they asked participants to elaborate on 4 different events of their childhood. The thing is, one of these events was an outright lie. No participant ever got lost in a shopping mall. Can you guess how many participants actually believed that they did though? 25%. 1 in 4 participants actually fell for a false memory. Loftus did a range of studies like this, and it put a massive hole through the validity of recovered memory therapy. Because if false memories can, in fact, be implanted, then all those memories of CSA that were uncovered in therapy could be just that. Side note, this research into false memories is also why the courts don't rely on any eyewitness testimony, because with the right suggestive questioning, those witness memories can be tampered with. Anyway, back to RMT. With all this research coming out in the mid-90s, people really started to question whether or not the trauma they uncovered in therapy was legit. And well, with corroboration, many found out that it wasn't. Their trauma memories had in fact been falsely implanted. And then many took to the courts and sued the psychotherapists for malpractice, negligence, etc. And they won. Good victory. These days, RMT is more a thing of the past. Much of the public, and yes, therapists out there, do still believe in the idea of repressed memories, but there isn't this eagerness to try and uncover memories because of what we've seen in the dangers of RMT. As to whether repressed memories do exist, the jury's still out, but a lot of memory researchers are quite adamant that it doesn't, for reasons such as trauma is more actively forgotten with time than actively and unconsciously repressed. People are generally pretty good at remembering specific parts of their trauma, whether they'd like to or not, and even when abuse is truly uncovered, it's often because as a child it was interpreted innocuously, but as an adult it was reinterpreted as something sinister. So yeah, in summary, be very careful of any therapist suggesting you have things like CSA hidden in your past that you never knew of. And if you do try to uncover any trauma memory, just make sure you have a way of corroborating those memories. Okay, let's put RMT away now. Let's move on to the next therapy. The name alone for this one will shock you. It's honestly damning that it was named such a thing. It's called attack therapy. How can you put attack and therapy in the same sentence? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, let's take a look at what it is. It's been described as a type of confrontation or ventilation therapy. But no, it's not about patients confronting their demons or venting their emotions. It's about the group therapy members confronting the patient on their behavior. How do they do that? By attacking them. I shit you not. Therapists and group members would surround the patient and insult them, humiliate them, degrade them, demoralize them. All in the name of therapy. Patients would often bawl their eyes out or get extremely angry at them. I mean, fair enough, but come on, who does this? In what world would this work? Where's the common sense? When researching this topic, I was dumbfounded when I came across it. Then I remembered though, this infamous AFL preseason camp that was so controversial because of the methods that it used and the failure that it was. And then it clicked that maybe this was attack therapy after all. Now, take my word for this. I don't actually know for certain if this was attack therapy. It just seems to line up with everything that I've read about attack therapy. So in 2017, this AFL team from South Australia called the Adelaide Crows had just lost the AFL Grand Final, and they were looking for a way to give their team a bit more resilience and mental fortitude because they felt they were lacking that in the Grand Final. So they called up these guys from Queensland called Collective Mind, and they asked them to come in and do a pre-season camp for them. Now I'm just going off reports here, but players said the camp was cult-like. On the way there, they were blindfolded and kept silent. The facilitators asked them many personal questions that they said would be confidential, but then were later used to insult each of those players. One exercise involved players being tied up to a tree and then made to crawl to a knife that was 10 meters away. Whilst they crawled, teammates and facilitators hurled abuse at them. They brought in that confidential information and attacked them very personally, often involving issues like childhood trauma, relationship issues, and domestic abuse. The camp broke the team. They had a terrible 2018 season. Their best players all requested trades to other teams. Their coach left and their assistant coach was sacked. The Crows have been terrible as a team for the past 8 years, and many say it's because of this. If you want to look into another story of attack therapy, search up Synanon. This is where attack therapy actually began and was developed. They called it The Game. This organization was actually a cult. They did many other horrific things in there, so it's a terrible, horrifying kind of story, what they did even outside of the therapy parameters. Last on this list, we have rebirthing therapy. This so-called therapy is really sickening. And to explain, I'm going to focus on the story of Candice Newmaker, a 10-year-old girl from Colorado, USA. Candice was in adoptive care and her mother was having a hard time connecting with her. Candice had a lot of behavioral issues and a diagnosis of reactive detachment disorder. Candice's mother really wanted to help her in any way that she could. And she sought out some experts. Man, I'm really using a lot of quotation marks today because it says a lot about what I'm dealing with. Anyway, she got in some experts that were trained in rebirthing therapy, and these social workers thought it could be a good way to improve the relationship between them, enable a long-lasting, positive mother-daughter relationship. Now, not every part of rebirthing therapy is dangerous. In fact, the therapy started out purely as a set of breathing exercises, harmless breathing exercises. Where it gets scary is when psychotherapists incorporate what's called birthing simulation. The aim is to give the child a do-over of their birth, essentially trying to give them a new lease on life, like a blank slate. The process looks almost exactly like you pictured if it was done with blankets. The child is tightly wrapped in blankets, pillows, other materials to simulate what it'd be like to be inside a womb. They are then coached to escape from it, although the escape isn't necessarily easy. Just like the birthing experience, there's a lot of pressure and squeezing going on to make it really hard for that child to get out. You can see here how it's really starting to get a bit dangerous. For Candace, this was only part of the picture. Those 2 social workers also had 2 assistants as well that they used to help lay on top of Candace in here and crushing her essentially with their combined weight of over 300 kilos. As this went on, Candace screamed, please stop pushing. I can't breathe. Okay, I'm dying. I'm sorry. But instead of stopping, the therapist kept going and even said, you want to die? Okay, go ahead, die right now. This went on for 70 minutes. Candace told the adults that she was going to die 11 times. She passed out from asphyxiation and was later pronounced dead. It's such a sad story. Candace's case was settled in court and the 2 social workers were sentenced to 16 years in prison minimum. To this date, no research has found rebirthing therapy to be effective, and the American Psychiatric Association has condemned it, citing that its extreme methods pose serious risk and it should not be used under any circumstances. And there we go. There's 3 psychotherapies that have caused more harm than good. Special mention to critical incident debriefing, which has also garnered attention due to its questionable effects on acute trauma. You can check that out through a link in the description for more information. But in summary for today, look, bottom line, be careful when you're seeking out a therapist, especially an unlicensed one. Believe it or not, you don't have to be licensed to be a psychotherapist, but you do if you want to be a psychologist, so better to seek out a psychologist. You can also utilize resources like the NICE guidelines or the APS review of psychological treatments listed in the description to help you work out whether or not a treatment is safe or not. These guidelines can tell you what disorder is suited for which treatment and how strong the evidence is for it. If you do encounter a dodgy therapy though, you can do something about it. In Australia, you can flag it to APRA. They're the governing body for health practitioners in Australia, and they can help you with filing out a report, because ultimately no one should have to go through trauma in order to treat their trauma. But that's another episode of My Cartography. Let me know in the comments which therapy shocked you the most. And as always, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe along. I'll see you in the next one.